Okay folks, so today we're going to look at the structure of xylem and phloem in detail. If you go to page 158, you should see this table there. So the first thing that we're going to fill in is the where is it found and the arrangement and functions. So in terms of the parts of the plants that you find your vascular tissue, you find it absolutely everywhere. So roots, stems, leaves, flowers, they all will contain vascular tissue. And the arrangements you should know from the mandatory practical are in the vascular bundles. The vascular bundles contain both xylem and phloem, and they have both very specific jobs. So xylem's job is to transport water and minerals, and in my head X and W are very close to each other in the alphabet, so these go together. And phloem is responsible for transport of food, and here the pH kind of sounds like it could be an F, so that's the link that I make for xylem and for phloem. So I'm going to show you just a little video to give you an understanding. There are two types of xylem. The first type essentially looks like this, a bit of a straw. The colours are significant, as are these dots. And the second type, when we see it, the shape is very important here. Again, the dots are going to mean something, and there is linkage between here these particular pieces. So thank you for bearing with me. So here we have what are called xylem vessels. So they are sections, essentially like a straw. And again, the colours, as we said, are significant. So there's this green bit, and there are the little black dots that are there. And what these do is they stack one on top of the other, from roots all the way to shoot tips, flowers. And if you were to look down these vessels, they are hollow tubes from top to bottom. The significance of the coloured lines, so the green, the yellow and the red in these straws, is that this is spiral lignin that is in the walls, and the black dots are things called pits. So over here are things called tracheids. They are another type of xylem. You can see that they have tapered ends, top and bottom, and again these guys have pits all the way along them. That's what these little black dots are supposed to be. And there is a connection between each section of tracheid. So these guys stack one on top of the other, and if you were to look down these don't look hollow. There is a kind of a sieve connection between them in which the water and minerals will move through. So moving back to this, the xylem vessels are the ones that look like the straws. We'll do some diagram drawing in a second. And the tracheids are these guys with the pointy ends, the tapered ends. Xylem vessels are found in deciduous trees and flowering plants, so essentially more evolved, more complicated plants. And the tracheids will be found in conifers. Now, when both of these tissues come to maturity, the cells that are in them are dead. There's no cytoplasm, no nucleus. They are essentially dead cells. So we are going to go into here, and we're going to do some of what it looks like, the diagram drawing. So the first thing I'm going to start with are going to be the vessels. So if you have to draw a vessel, we'll draw them in blue. You essentially have little cylinders like so. They stack one on top of the other. you can put in your little dots for your pits. So these are your pits. This is your vessel. And we will change our color of pen, and we just draw something that looks a little bit like this, and this is essentially the spiral lignin which surrounds the vessel. Now if we were to look, so this is a longitudinal view of it, if we were to do a transverse section, this is essentially a hollow tube of dead cells. So xylem is non-living. And the last thing that I wanted to put in that little box for this is we see this in deciduous and in flowering plants. So that's where you see the vessels. These are the more evolved ones. In the tracheids are the ones that you find in conifers. So they are not evolved, and in terms of their diagram you can draw them a number of different ways, but essentially these guys have tapered ends in them. So you can draw them like penne pasta if you so wish. You give them their dots like so, and we have little connections between each one. Couple of dots, couple of dots. So in terms of our labeling here, it's very important that we have the T for the tracheid and a T for tapered. So these have tapered ends, pointy ends. We have the dots here, which are the pits, and again this allows water to move sideways. And the lignin is, these are lignified, but the lignin is built within the wall. And just like our vessels, these are hollow tubes of, these are hollow sections of dead cells. So there will be a kind of a sieve connection at this area here between them, so it's not perfectly hollow, but again these guys are dead cells. I'm going to draw the phloem now, seeing as we're at this board. I'm just going to get rid of over here on the vessels on the left. And this is phloem. So phloem is responsible for transport of food. I'm going to make this green because we can. So okay, so when we draw phloem, we draw something that looks like this. So again, this is a longitudinal section looking down. Now, I'm not being rude, but in my head, these are like boobs. So phloem has, these guys are called companion cells. And what they do is they control what happens, or the nucleus controls what happens in the companion cell and what happens in here. This is called a sieve tube cell. And these little segregated bits are called sieve plates. Both within obviously our companion cell, but also in here on both sides it will be filled with cytoplasm. So phloem is living. as xylem is dead. And you're going to need all three of those diagrams to be able to either label them if they're given to you or be able to draw them. So pause if you need to now to finish your diagrams. Now, this is just another version of it just to show you. So we have the spiral lignin on the outside. We have no end walls, so the continuous tube. So if you were to look up, it literally is like looking up through a straw. And we have the pits, and the job of pits is to allow the sideways movement of water. Now, as we said, these are more evolved, so they're much more better at their job than tracheids are. And underneath where your diagrams are, there is it dead or alive? So xylem is dead, and the carbohydrate present is lignin. And just to remind you that it's spiral lignin for support. In terms of our tracheids, so this is just another way of representing them. Again, we've got the tapered ends. We have the pits for the movement of water. Here are carbohydrate is lignin, but it's physically in the wall for support, and as with the vessels, these are dead cells. Usually found in conifers. So everything here, this should be, you can write it in under your diagram. Ooh, you got it so good, we said it twice. So just to say in terms of lignin, it is a ridiculously strong chemical. If this is our tracheids, it's made up within the wall. It gives a very, very strong component, makes it very, very rigid, and lignin is the main component in wood. Unfortunately, you can't do anything with lignin other than burn it. There are groups, just as an FYI, in the UK that are actually looking at dissolving wood and seeing can they use it to make environmentally friendly fuels. It's got very cool chemistry. So in terms of our phloem, this is essentially what we've drawn. So here are the boobs, which are your companion cells. We have the sieve tube cell, which the companion cell, and again in our sieve tube cell and in this section here there are no nucleus, whereas the companion cell does have a nucleus. Between each sieve tube cell is a sieve plate, and as you said, this is the cytoplasm, and it extends all the way through your phloem. This is the nucleus, and it is responsible for controlling the activities of your companion cell and your sieve tube cells. So in terms of the carbohydrate, here the carbohydrate is made of cellulose, which we've done when we did the biomolecule chapter in chapter 3, and this is a living structure, and the fact that it has cytoplasm and that it has a nucleus makes phloem living tissue. And that should complete everything on page 158 for you. So again, these just are other different views. So this is our sieve plate up here. This would be the transverse section view of it. So it's essentially got loads and loads of perforations in it with which the glucose moves up through. So what you're going to do for me now is you are going to go to page 159, which looks like this. I'm going to put a version of this on the next slide for you to have a look and see, could you figure out what are the words that are missing. You need to then solve the anagram, and I would make the point that anything that has a number 3 is a space. So you can ignore anything that is a number 3, and can you find my plant scientist pickup line? Might not make a whole lot of sense just yet, but you never know, you might need it in the future. So I'm going to leave this here for you. You can pause and I will see you on Zoom.